My name is Zelda Monroe. I am 68. I run a small chain of neighborhood home goods stores built over 4 decades of early mornings and honest hands. Tonight, I sit under the amber lights of the Riverside dining room, a place that pretends to be warm. The air is velvet and heavy, the kind that clings to the skin. My wine glass keeps finding itself full. I taste a faint bitterness that does not belong. The tip of my tongue tingles. My throat turns slow. Mark, my only son, lifts his glass to make a toast. Lily, my daughter-in-law, smiles with the brightness of new silver. People I barely know in press suits laugh at stories that circle the same words: retirement, safety, consolidation, signatures. A linen napkin rests on my lap. Inside my purse, I feel the soft square of an embroidered handkerchief with my grandchildren's names. I plan to give them after dessert. It is my small way of saying, I see you, I remember, you matter. I reach for water. The stem of the glass is slick. The room hums. Then a different sound cuts through the music. A chair leg skids. A breath catches. Emma stands from across the table, 19, shoulders tight, eyes steady in a way I have only seen twice in her life. She circles behind me without ceremony. Her palm slides around my wrist. Her fingers are cold. The pulse in my wrist jumps to meet her grip. She leans close. I smell citrus shampoo and the clean salt of fear. Follow me, Grandma. Don't ask why. Her words are a thread pulled taut between us. I turn, confused. The room blurs at the edges like glass fogging after a kettle boils. She leans closer, barely a whisper. A plea made of bone and truth. Please trust me. At family dinner, my granddaughter grabbed my arm. Follow me, Grandma, don't ask why. When I was confused, she just whispered, please trust me, and it saved my life. The clink of silverware keeps a polite rhythm. Mark notices, his smile hardens at the corners. Mom, where are you going? Dessert is coming. Lily rises with him. Her voice lands soft and sticky. Zelda, stay. Everyone wants your advice on the best way to protect assets. We found a quiet room upstairs. It will be easier to talk there. Emma's grip tightens. The inside of my wrist throbs under her fingers. It is the same place her tiny hand pressed years ago when her parents were shouting in the living room, and she pulled me toward the backyard to hear the wind through the maple. Back then, she could not form the words. Tonight, she has all the words she needs. Thematic echo. The body remembers what the mind tries to rationalize. I rise without argument. I do not explain. I do not apologize. My chair slides back with a hush. I steady my purse against my hip. The handkerchief presses against my palm like a folded heartbeat. I hear my name from 3 directions at once. Zelda as insistence, Grandma as bait, Mom as leash. I breathe in the layered scents of rosemary steak, candle wax, and cork. The wine on my tongue feels wrong. My feet want to move. Mark steps in front of me with a laugh that does not reach his eyes. This is silly. Emma, sit. Grandma is fine. Lily's hand hovers near my elbow as if she owns my balance. A server appears with a fresh bottle. The cork pops. The sound is festive. Inside my chest, it lands like a warning bell. Emma's mouth is near my ear again. Her voice is smaller now, more urgent, made of air and courage. Please trust me. The words choose for me. I set my linen napkin on the table. The gesture is gentle. The decision is not. I walk. I do not look back. I do not raise my voice. The path between tables is narrow, sleeves brush, perfumes mix. The floor is a quilt of shadows and light. My heart keeps the pace of a runner at the first climb. We reach the hallway. The music fades. The colder air of the corridor meets my skin and clears the fog a fraction. Emma does not release my wrist. Straight to the door, no talking. I nod. I can feel my age in my knees. I can feel every year I spent carrying this family in the steadiness of my spine. Moral conflict rises like a tide. Trusting my granddaughter means walking past my son, choosing her grip over his smile, choosing the quiet truth over the loud performance of loyalty. We pass the host stand. His polite question dies when he sees Emma's face. Outside, the night air is truer. It smells like river and asphalt. My tongue prickles again and the bitterness sharpens. Emma turns me toward the far corner of the lot where the lights do not reach so easily. Only then does she loosen her hand. The absence of pressure makes my skin feel naked. I exhale. The breath shakes. Inside the restaurant, a burst of laughter tries to pull me back. I do not turn. "Follow me, Grandma. Don't ask why. Please trust me." The words ring like church bells in a town that forgot it had a church. Somewhere behind us, the door opens. I hear Mark's voice. I hear Lily's, both pretending to be casual. I think of the handkerchief in my purse, white cotton, blue thread, Emma's name stitched in my own careful script. I place my palm flat against the purse. I choose. I am Zelda Monroe, 68, shopkeeper, widow, mother, grandmother. I walk into the night at my granddaughter's side. I do not raise a scene. I do not wait for permission. The door closes behind us with a soft thud that sounds exactly like a boundary finally set. Most mornings begin the same. The shop wakes before the sun. I turn the brass key. The lock clicks. A breath of air carries scents that shaped my life. Cut pine, lemon oil, warm cardboard. I flip one switch, then another. Light spreads across shelves. Enamel bowls, brooms, clothespins. This is my world. Simple and earned. On the counter sits a frame with my husband's photograph. He's been gone 14 years. His toffee jacket still hangs in cedar. I roll up the security grate. It sticks in cold weather. My shoulders answer like old hinges. I take the ledger from the drawer, green cloth spine, squared paper softened by years. People tell me to use a cloud system. I prefer ink. Ink remembers who held the pen. I total yesterday's sales and list which vendors must be paid by Friday. My handwriting is tidy and stubborn. It looks like a woman who keeps promises when no one watches. The bell sings. The first customer steps in. "Morning, Mrs. Monroe." He wants screws by the pound and the caulk he swears by. He calls me by my married name with an ease that feels like respect. In here, I am the keeper of what lasts. I cut twine. I measure felt pads. I ask after his mother's ankle. He pays and tips the jar for the food bank. Respect can live in a name. At home, my name is a lever used to pry open my wallet. Mom when they want tenderness. Zelda when they want compliance. I have spent a lifetime paying bills not mine and smoothing messes I did not make. The question sharpens with age. If I keep rescuing, do I teach them to swim or to wait for me? I sweep the entry mat, grit crackles in the dustpan. The aisles smell brighter as the heater lifts lemon oil into the air. I unlock the safe. Inside are vendor envelopes and a stack of white cotton squares, pressed last night. Handkerchiefs, each stitched by my fingers with blue thread. The names of my grandchildren in block letters. Emma's sits on top. The E is thicker where the thread snagged. I left it as proof that love favors presence over polish. By 9, the shop carries its weekday heartbeat. A young couple comes in for a plunger and leaves with a welcome mat. A retired teacher asks for picture hooks. She says her husband finally hung the family photos after 10 years of boxes. "You were right," she says. "The walls look like home now." She touches my sleeve when she thanks me. The blessing fills a space where other conversations have grown thin. Between customers, I polish the counter with the patience that once taught a child to tie a shoe. I straighten the paper bag stamped Monroe's home. Useful things. Fair price. My nails are short. My palms are lined. I do not wear a ring. I let the clock decide when it is time for the apple in my purse. Crisp, tart. Enough. Mail arrives. Invoices and circulars. A padded envelope addressed in Lily's looping script. I do not open it. Paper carries weather. I keep the shop clear. I tuck it under the ledger and run my thumb along the green spine. The day hums. The door opens and closes. People ask for help and leave steadier than they came. Before I lock up for lunch, I slip the handkerchiefs into my purse. The cotton is cool against my skin. Tonight I will try to speak love in a language that is not money. A name in blue thread, a square of cloth meant to touch a face. I count the cash drawer, I balance the ledger, I straighten the photo frame. The bell rings once more. A woman in a red scarf smiles. "You always make this place feel safe, Mrs. Monroe." After she leaves, the door drifts shut. The lock clicks. In here, I am seen. Out there, at the dinner, I am not sure who I will be. I pick up my purse. The handkerchiefs whisper against the lining. They sound like a promise I am ready to keep tonight. 3 days before the dinner, my house kept time. Every room ticked with small routines. Then high heels broke the rhythm, crisp and staccato. Lily's steps on my tile. She did not remove her coat. She set a leather tote on the dining table and opened her laptop so the screen glowed like a stage. A logo spun. Modern Nest Smart Interiors. A tagline about frictionless living. She smiled with her teeth. Perfume arrived before her words. Zelda, this is the moment. A chain of smart interior centers, memberships, design curation driven by artificial intelligence, a logistics backbone with locker pickup, influencer partners lined up. She slid a deck toward me. Arrows and hockey sticks. Founding investors get equity and advisory fees. There is a short window. We need a letter of intent by Friday. I poured tea into 2 cups. Mine stayed near. Hers cooled. I let her talk. Momentum is a sales tool. Silence unhooks it. She tapped the trackpad. A slide promised 3 pilot locations, a 4th with my name on it, Monroe District flagship. The words worked to sound inevitable. She said the bank loved it. Mark would run operations. The optics of a legacy woman entrepreneur would be priceless. She used the word family as if it were collateral. I stood, crossed to the sideboard, pulled the bottom drawer. A file waited where I left it. Brown tab, block letters, Mark and Lily Ventures. I placed it beside her laptop, paper against glass. My hands did not shake. The first packet held the smoothie franchise, stainless blenders, a landlord dispute, an early termination fee, $38,000 unrecovered. Under that sat a cryptocurrency fund with a website and no phone, $45,000 gone. Then an import car escrow that vanished, $52,000 lost, a pop-up showroom lease, $12,000 in penalties, a dropship decor scheme that produced chargebacks. I turned pages, due dates, late fees, compounding interest, numbers gathering like snow until a roof forgets how to bear weight. She watched with her chin lifted, her smile held like a pose. The market changed. Those were learning years, she said. This is different. We have technology and partners. We have a runway. I closed the last receipt, flattened the edges with my palm. I let the ledger weight of the folder settle into the table. Then I closed the file. The sound was soft. It felt heavier than thunder. No. One word. Clean. Finished. Her eyebrows lifted with polite surprise. Zelda, you misread the scale. The upside is generational. You know how one decision can expand an entire life. I thought of paying Mark's first semester when my roof leaked, working Sundays after his night terrors. The night the car would not start, and I walked 5 blocks in rain so he could make a tryout. Love is a ledger, too. You enter and enter until the book is full. If you do not reconcile, debt pretends to be devotion. The moral sting landed hard. If I keep rescuing, do I raise a man or a child with gray at his temples? She shifted posture. Her voice turned velvet. We are family. Help us cross this bridge. You would not leave us in the river. The laptop brightened another slide. Testimonials with perfect teeth. I lifted my cup. China clicked against its saucer. Steady. I am not investing. Her smile thinned, her heels tapped, a metronome before a new song. The window closes Friday. Missing it would be a shame. I will tell Mark you want to think. You may tell Mark I said no, I answered. I stood to end the meeting. Explanation invites negotiation. The house held a clean silence. She gathered her tote. Perfume followed her to the door. When it closed, the latch kissed wood. A small sound, a promise to myself. I returned the file to its drawer, placed the ledger on top, rinsed the untouched cup, and set it to dry. Outside, clouds stacked over the street. The light shifted. I felt pressure building past the eaves, the kind you measure with bones rather than gauges. 3 days remained. The sky knew it before I said it. The night after Lily's visit, the house held its breath. Even the refrigerator hummed more quietly than usual. I fell asleep with the ledger on the nightstand and the handkerchiefs folded in my purse. Clouds had stacked over the street at dusk, and I felt weather in my bones. At 2 a.m, a hard sound cracked the silence. Metal wrenched against metal, then the thud of something heavy against wood. I was on my feet before I knew I had moved. The hallway felt colder than it should. The carpet pressed a map of familiar threads into my soles. Another strike landed outside. The window vibrated. A small picture frame crooked itself on the wall. I parted the curtain with 2 fingers and looked toward the streetlight. The beam caught motion. A figure swung what looked like a bat. My mailbox shuddered on its post. A second shape shook an aerosol can. A red plume rushed across my white front door. The word appeared the way pain appears when you bump a bone against a counter. Sudden, blunt, unarguable, selfish. The letters dripped down the panels, thick and glossy, a red that did not exist in nature. The can hissed again. A line slashed across the step. The nozzle squealed and went quiet. I did not open the door. I watched. I counted breaths. Headlights idled at the curb. A dark SUV with the engine low and even. A driver waiting with the patience of someone who expects to leave quickly. The 2 figures jogged toward it. One looked back at my porch as if to confirm the wound had taken. The vehicle rolled away without drama, a ghost slipping between parked cars. No license plate lights, no hurry. Across the street, a bedroom lamp blinked on in Mr. Patel's house. A narrow figure moved his curtain. He raised a hand in a small, helpless salute. I nodded. He could not see the nod. The gesture steadied me anyway. I stepped back from my window and felt the quiet wrap around my shoulders. I did not dial the emergency line. I let the hot edge of fear cool into a plan. I put on a coat over my nightgown, laced my work shoes, took photographs from inside through glass to document the paint run before dew could blur the trails. I noted the time in the corner of a page from the ledger, 2:12. The house smelled like old paper and soap. The porch smelled like metal, solvent, and the sour tang of aerosol propellant that leaked under the threshold. By 3, the neighborhood had returned to the lullaby of distant freeway tires. I made coffee that did not ask to be sweetened and sat at the kitchen table with the photographs lined like evidence in a private trial. The word on my door glared from the prints, red against white, accusation against witness. I heard my husband's voice from a year when money was lean. Do not answer an insult with an invitation. Build a step they cannot climb. At 6, I called a handyman who once repaired a door for the church daycare after a break-in. I can be there in 40 minutes, he said. Bring a new box, I answered, and a post that does not mind standing its ground. I called a cleaning service that specializes in removing paint from brick and wood. The woman on the line did not gasp. She asked about surface finish and temperature. Her steadiness made room for mine. While I waited, I swept the foyer. The bristles hissed across the mat. Red dust found its way under the door and clung to the fibers. I set a bucket and rags by the threshold and closed my eyes for 1 minute. When I opened them, the plan had lengthened. Cameras. Not as a threat, as memory that can be reviewed without argument. I searched my contacts. A contractor who wired the shop last winter answered on the second ring. He could install 2 units by afternoon, one above the door, one facing the street. The handyman replaced the mailbox first. a simple black steel with a flag that clicked into place, with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. The cleaners arrived with citrus solvent and soft brushes. They worked in quiet concentration. The red lifted slowly, stubborn at the edges. The pigment bled pink before surrendering to white. No one made small talk. I brought water and stayed out of their way. By noon, the word was gone. A faint blush remained where paint had soaked the grain. The new mailbox stood straighter than the old one, its post set in concrete. The camera installer positioned a ladder and ran tidy cables along the soffit. The lens blinked alive. A small red dot acknowledged the street. I signed receipts with the pen I keep for payroll and thanked each person by name. When the last truck pulled away, the house looked ordinary again, the kind of ordinary earned by people who take care of what they own. The concrete around the post would cure by morning. The camera would watch what I could not. I washed my hands and scrubbed the faint stain from my right thumb where a drop of solvent had dried. I did not call Mark. I did not call Lily. The front step was clean. My silence was not surrender. It was placement, a stone set where a wall would stand. Saturday evening, I arrived at Riverside under a pewter sky. Street lamps made the wet pavement gleam like ribbon. The host recognized my name and gestured toward the back. His smile was professional, not warm. The dining room Lily had called cozy felt busy the moment I stepped in. More chairs than a family needed were tucked close to the table. Place cards dotted white linen like little billboards. I counted faces I did not know, suits, polished shoes, watches that caught the light. Mark stood with his arms open, a performance of comfort. Lily kissed the air beside my cheek and guided me to a seat that faced the room, not the windows. My napkin was folded like a white sail, the silverware lined up in strict formation. A server appeared with a bottle in the crook of his arm. The foil collar shone. He placed my glass, tilted it, and poured without asking. The wine smelled dark and agreeable. When I sipped, a bitter thread lingered at the back of my tongue. It did not belong to the grape. The man beside me introduced himself as a retirement strategist. His cufflinks were shaped like shields. Across from me sat a woman who said she handled acquisitions. She nodded at Mark as if they had shared a syllabus. A third guest asked about real estate valuations in a cooling market. Another told a story about an aunt whose heirs kept fighting because she had not simplified her holdings. I reached for water. The rim was chilled. A lemon wheel rode the surface. When I set it down, my wine had refreshed itself. The server returned often, the bottle tilted like a metronome. Each time I took a quarter sip, the glass climbed back to the same line. Mark told an anecdote about me negotiating with a flooring vendor when he was a boy, painting me as fearless. The room laughed in the places he paused for it. Lily followed with a toast to family wisdom. She used phrases like legacy and continuity. The cork from a new bottle popped. The bright sound made the candle flames quiver. A drip of wax crawled down the taper and hardened into a teardrop that would not fall. Salads arrived, arranged like small sculptures. Rolls slept in linen wraps that kept their heat. A man at the far end described a tax vehicle as gentle. Others praised convenience and speed. When I asked how everyone knew Mark and Lily, answers braided themselves into something taut. Colleagues, clients, friends of friends. The room had no edges, only intention. I rested my hand on my purse. Inside, the embroidered handkerchiefs waited, cotton squares holding the quiet labor of evenings when the television talked to itself, and I stitched names that mattered. I had planned to give them after dessert. The thought felt fragile here, as if a gust from the kitchen could carry it away. Lily rested her fingertips on my elbow with a softness that rehearsed care. She mentioned a dessert course upstairs, a private room, a quieter place to talk about best practices for safeguarding what I had built. The acquisitions woman smiled as if she had already heard the plan. The strategist nodded and said quiet spaces help decisions. I chewed slowly and listened. The wine deepened, Bitterness widened its shadow. The server leaned in again, the bottle tipped. I covered the rim with 2 fingers. He hesitated, then smiled a service smile and moved on. Mark caught the motion and delivered a half shrug as if to say, "Enjoy yourself, Mom." Lily leaned near my shoulder and whispered that everyone was eager to learn from me. Eager can be a kind word for hungry. The room was beautiful. The linens were white, the talk was polished to a shine. Yet under the tablecloth I could feel a current pushing in one direction. Sell, simplify, trust the process, sign here. Another cork eased from a new bottle with a tidy sigh. I folded my napkin once and laid it across my lap like a border I could still draw. The bitter thread on my tongue cautioned me to stay awake and keep watching. Emma did not slow until the door breathed us into the night. The restaurant's noise fell behind. The parking lot smelled of river air and warm asphalt. A thin wind found the notch between my collar and my skin. She kept my wrist until we reached the shadow of a maple where the light did not land. Then did she face me? Her breathing clipped and fast, her eyes bright with a kind of fear that knows the shape of what it names. "Grandma, listen. Mark and Lily put something in your wine. It is a sedative they got from a clinic that treats large animals. They said it makes people calm, confused, agreeable for a few hours. You were going to be taken upstairs to a private room. There are lawyers, witnesses ready to swear you looked clear. They want you to sign control of your stores." The wind pressed the words against my face. They stuck like rain. I felt the bitter thread on my tongue turn metallic. The roofline tilted a degree and then steadied. "How do you know?" I asked. The question came out lower than I meant. Her jaw trembled once, then held. "I came home early yesterday. I heard Lily on the phone talking about dosing you. She told someone the drug would make you compliant enough to sign anything. Tonight I saw Mark touch the rim of your glass after the server poured. I saw Lily nod. I could not let them walk you upstairs." The asphalt held a day's heat. It lifted through the soles of my shoes like a small fire. Moral conflict rose with it, a hard and simple tide. Believe the child who has only ever told me the truth, or side with the son I raised into manhood. Family is a word that can bless or bind. Tonight it felt like a rope in the wrong hands. "Are you sure about the lawyers?" I said. Emma pointed toward the far corner of the building where a narrow stairwell window showed shadowed shapes moving between coats on hooks. "I followed Lily earlier," she said. "I heard the maitre d' confirm the room and the timing. They want to bring you when you are relaxed, make a toast, ask you about legacy, pass around papers." I drew air deep until the cold settled the tremor in my chest. The smell of tar and damp leaves mixed with the faint detergent on Emma's sweater. My wrist still remembered her grip. I was glad for the ache. "All right," I said. "We will not go back inside." The choice climbed my spine and stood. I turned my face away from the windows so the candlelight would not catch my doubt. Emma took out her phone with hands that shook only at the knuckles. "I am calling a cab to take you to the hospital. You need a blood test while anything is still in your system. I will stay long enough to make sure they do not come out this way." "Emma," I said. The name felt like a key. "This will hurt you with your parents." "I know," she answered, "but it will hurt worse if I do nothing." Headlights swept the far edge of the lot. A taxi slowed. My knees loosened when I saw it. I squeezed Emma's fingers once, the same spot where her hand had pressed when she was small and the house was full of shouting. I opened the cab door and felt the warm breath of its heater brush my legs. "Thank you," I said. She nodded and stepped back into the shadow line. In the side mirror, I watched her stand like a thin pillar between light and dark. The driver asked for an address. I gave him the hospital. Behind us, the restaurant glowed. Ahead, the road unrolled, slick and black. Somewhere between them, I shifted from being managed to choosing. I pressed my purse to my ribs where the handkerchiefs lay, cotton against bone, proof that love is action. The cab pulled into the street. The The door to the private room would open without me. The witnesses would have to find another truth to swear to. The emergency entrance was washed in hard white, colder than the night. The cab pulled away. Inside, an intake nurse asked my name, age, reason for visit. I spoke slowly so I would hear it too. Possible ingestion of a sedative, tingling tongue, bitter taste, potential coercion at a restaurant. Her eyes steadied. She handed me a pen. The click sounded final. They led me to a curtained bay. The ceiling grill smelled like disinfectant. A tech tied a tourniquet. The band pressed the thin skin of my inner arm. A vein rose obediently. The needle slipped. A cool pull traveled toward my shoulder. The tube darkened. He labeled 2 vials, read my name aloud, chain of custody, time stamped, initials neat. When he left, I rubbed the small circle of gauze as if it were a tender coin. Machines whispered. A ventilator down the hall kept time. The resident introduced herself. Accuracy sat in her voice. She ordered a toxicology screen, benzodiazepines, anesthetic residues, veterinary sedatives. The last category slid into the room like a quiet accusation. My chest filled with pressure that did not touch the pulse. I sat up and felt a lag between thought and motion. My tongue tingled again, a mild frost along the tip. The resident tapped a reflex, nodded, asked whether I wanted law enforcement notified. I said yes. She stepped out to call. I texted Emma 3 words. At hospital. Proud. I did not write to Mark. The officer arrived and opened a notepad. She asked me to walk through the evening. I told her about extra chairs, polished watches, the glass that refilled, Emma's breath at my ear. Follow me, Grandma. Do not ask why. Please trust me. She took the restaurant name, table location, the sequence of pours, whether any hand touched my rim after the server set it down. She requested my consent to collect the dress later, to swab the skin by my lip, to request footage from the dining room and stairwell to a private room. I signed where she pointed. Her pen drew fence posts across the page. She asked about my son and daughter-in-law without judgment. I answered without ornament. Yes, they have asked for money. Yes, we argued 3 days ago. Yes, my mailbox was vandalized last night. No, I cannot prove who did it. She wrote it all. Lab results do not rush. Time divided itself into small tasks. Sip water, count ceiling tiles, recite vendor names so my mind would not wander. When the resident returned, certainty and compassion shared her face. She named the drug, a tranquilizer used on large animals, dose consistent with impaired judgment, compliance increased, memory likely fogged. The report would print, custody documented, a copy placed in my chart, and the evidence packet. My body answered the news with a simple request: warmth. The resident brought a blanket from a cabinet. I tucked it under my elbows. Heat reminded my skin that care still exists. The officer asked whether I wished to press charges when the investigation matured. I said the law can take what belongs to it. She told me a unit was en route to the restaurant, another to my home to photograph the paint before fog or dew altered it. I thanked them both. Gratitude helps me keep my body mine. The resident advised no driving, rest, water within reach. She handed me a copy of my statement and the lab order number. I folded the papers into my purse beside the embroidered handkerchiefs, a soft weight against the hard proof of harm. I scheduled follow-up, signed discharge, sat for a moment to let the room stop humming. At the exit, a glass door held my reflection, a woman under hospital light, hair a little undone, lipstick mostly gone, eyes clear. I named what I saw: mother, widow, shopkeeper, not a mark for anyone. The door opened with a hydraulic sigh. Night air met me like clean cloth. I stepped into it, felt the needle site pulse once, a reminder that damage can be named and healed. A taxi rolled to the curb. I raised my hand and kept it steady. Morning came like thin ledger light. I woke on my couch with discharge papers fanned across my chest and the hospital band snug on my wrist. At 8, the bell rang. The same officer from the night shift stepped in with a detective and a small evidence kit. They swabbed the corner of my mouth, bagged the dress, logged each step with initials and times. She said a unit had reached the restaurant. Cameras were secured. The staff confirmed a reservation for a private room upstairs. By late morning, the case felt like a map sprouting roads. The detective set his phone on my table. A financial crimes analyst joined by speaker. Her voice carried caffeine and care. She had pulled Lily's employer filings. She saw funds moving between elderly client accounts and a personal shell. Monthly withdrawals hid behind phrases like advisory sweeps and performance smoothing, each a steady bleed. She did not dramatize. She read numbers. They were enough. The evidence began to speak plainly now. Mark's pattern rose next. Printed emails from a boutique lender showed my name salted through subject lines. Monroe reputation. Monroe collateral. Monroe will not let a note fail. A photo of my storefront sat in the pitch deck to imply backing. The loans were staggered. Due dates braided so cash could be borrowed from tomorrow to patch today. He built a raft from promises and expected my name to be the rope. Escalation spread sideways. A veterinary clinic across the river reported inventory gaps. A tech remembered Lily's car parked after hours. The call log showed a short conversation with her number the day before the dinner. A boutique law office had drafted documents called transitional control and asset stewardship. The drafter appeared in a photo from our table, smiling as if he belonged. A financial planner with a glossy podcast had sketched a plan to shift voting power through a trust, while leaving me as the public face. Moral horror arrived without drama. This was not just my son and his wife crossing a line. It was a system of hands prepared to guide an older woman toward a signature and reward themselves for safeguarding her future. Each person took a fee. Each reassurance sanded a rough edge until the fraud felt like caregiving. I looked at stills from the restaurant staircase. The angle hid faces but showed intention. A trail dressed as courtesy. The analyst asked to contact at-risk clients from Lily's list. The officer said the district attorney would coordinate to prevent panic and preserve evidence. I agreed. I offered my own stack of oddities. Vendors who had thanked me for guarantees I never gave. A credit check inquiry I had not requested. A bank clerk's voicemail asking whether I wanted a wire limit raised. He photographed my phone and added the entries to the log. Mr. Patel called to say he had spoken with police about the SUV. He had noted the exact time by his dawn prayer alarm. Kindness with precision steadies a neighborhood. When we hung up, light slid across my new mailbox. The black paint held the sun like a kept promise. I pressed my palm to the door that had worn the word selfish only hours before. The wood was clean. The grain still blushed where pigment had tried to stay. Before they left, the officer looked at my shelves, the tools, the order, then back at me. Ms. Monroe, this is bigger than one dinner, but you are not alone. I nodded. The truth felt heavy and exact. She gave me a card with the case number and a direct line. I placed it in my green ledger because paper remembers. After the house quieted, I brewed tea and sat at the kitchen table with folders open like small doors. I made columns. People harmed. Mechanisms used. Dates that proved patterns. Accounts that needed a warning call. I was not planning vengeance. I was planning clarity. Somewhere in the stack lay the shape of a network that had mistaken my kindness for consent. I sharpened a pencil, wrote my name at the top of the first page, underlined it once, then began. By afternoon, the house settled. The detective's card lay beside my ledger like a bookmark. I brewed tea and cleared the kitchen table. The green ledger waited open to a clean page. Columns drew themselves under my pencil. Names, dates, sums, methods. I wrote a heading across the top. People harmed. Not clients, not accounts. People. The word kept the room from turning into arithmetic. I brought out the folders I had started at dawn and stacked them by category. Lily's elderly clients formed one pile. Each file wore a sticky note with a phone number and the name of a daughter or son who might pick up when fear made hearing harder. Mark's lenders formed a second. Their logos looked confident on paper yet pale under the lamp. A third pile held notes on the helpers, the clinic tech, the attorney with the soft tie, the planner with the gloss of certainty. I set the lamp lower so the light pooled but did not glare. Beside the lamp, I placed the square of white cotton embroidered with Emma's name, blue thread with one thicker stroke where the needle snagged. I let my fingers rest there when the work asked for steadiness. I told myself what I tell new clerks during holiday rush: move slow to move right. I wrote a letter to each person harmed, not a speech, not an accusation, a record, dates, transfers, document titles, who initiated, where the money went next. I copied supporting pages, circled amounts, flagged false signatures with an arrow in blue ink. I added the case number and the officer's direct line. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence in my steadier hand. You have a right to the truth and to your options. Please read, decide, and call the number above if you choose. I slid each set into a manila envelope. The flap whispered as it closed, adhesive pressed down like a seal on preserves. For the lenders, I included photographs of my storefront taken this morning, a proof of life that says no one is authorized to borrow on my name. For the clients, I added a simple checklist titled, What to Do Next, Contact Bank, Request a Hold, Demand an Audit, Ask for a Fraud Officer by title, Record every call. On a separate pad, I listed couriers and pickup windows. A weekday afternoon can make or break attention. I aimed for delivery by early evening when people are home and the light still helps the eyes. I printed labels, aligned them square, ran my thumb along each edge so nothing peeled in transit. The table turned into a field of small packages, quiet, orderly, potent. Between steps, I washed my hands as if residue from their schemes could cling to the skin. The scent of soap reset my head. I drank tea before it cooled. Warmth traveled like consent from throat to chest. I checked each stack against the ledger line. No duplicates, no missing pages, no wishful thinking dressed as proof. I did not call Mark. I did not call Lily. Explanation would turn into pleading, and I am finished with that work. My silence held shape, a tool rather than a void. When everything was ready, I placed Emma's handkerchief back in my purse and slid the first stack into a box. The box had once carried mason jars. Now it carried letters with pressure than glass. I wrote Courier 1 on the lid, addressed a second box, propped both by the door. Outside, the new mailbox looked like a small soldier. The cameras watched with red pinpricks. I breathed and felt the house breathe with me. Power can be loud. It can also be precise. Tonight I chose precision, paper, ink, records, the kind of truth that does not shout but does not move. When the courier rang, I opened the door and handed him the first box. He lifted it as if ordinary. I signed. The pen left my name where it belonged. The packages left my house. My hands steadied on the frame. The hinge did not creak. I turned off the lamp and let the room go dark on my terms. Morning leaned across my table like a ledger rule. By 9, I was at the post office with the second box. The courier had taken the first batch to evening addresses. The rest I chose to send by certified mail, return receipt requested, paper that travels with its own witness. The air inside smelled like tape and old ink. Fluorescent lights hummed. The line coiled past displays of bubble mailers and commemorative stamps. I set my box on the counter and felt the weight settle. 24 envelopes squared and sealed, each one carrying a small, exact piece of the truth. A clerk with a name tag that read P. Alvarez greeted me. Her voice held the patience of someone who measures twice. "How can I help you?" she asked. "Certified signature. Return receipt," I said. She slid a stack of green cards toward me. PS Form 3811, each a promise that a hand would meet a door and acknowledge what arrived. I wrote carefully. Recipient names, addresses, my return, the case number on the memo line. My pen moved without tremor. I had practiced this hand by paying bills in years when cash was short and the roof leaked, when steadiness was the only luxury. She weighed the first envelope. The digital scale flashed its number. A calm beep marked the record. A red date stamp landed with a tidy thud. She peeled a barcoded strip and fixed it straight. The label mirrored the shape of authority without drama. I repeated the steps until rhythm carried me. Fill, affix, press, set aside. The man behind me shifted his box of boots and watched in kind silence. A teenager in a team jacket read the words, "Return receipt." His lips formed the syllables as if they might teach him something about responsibility. The work slowed my breathing into something useful. I checked each flap, adhesive sealed, corners aligned, documents squared within. The clerk stacked completed pieces into a plastic tub marked certified. The tub's blue walls made the envelopes look blunt and honest. When my wrist cramped, I rested it on the edge of the box. In my purse, the embroidered handkerchief brushed my fingers, a soft square reminding me to keep my hands kind even while they stayed firm. 24 total, she said. She counted aloud, so we agreed. I paid with a card and asked for separate receipts, one for each name. She obliged without complaint. The printer chattered. A thin ribbon of proof coiled into a pile. She tore and handed them in neat fans. I slid the receipts into my ledger pocket. Paper remembers. Truth needs a place to stay. A woman at the next window wrestled with a customs form. The clerk guided her through each box with quiet respect. A toddler dropped a plastic dinosaur. It skittered under the bench. The father mouthed thanks when I stopped it with my shoe. Ordinary kindness kept the room from hard edges. Still, the air held a charge, not spectacle, consequence lacing its boots. Alvarez lifted the tub to the back and slid it onto a cart. For a moment, the envelopes rested beneath a poster about postal inspectors and fraud. The alignment felt like a nod. "These will go out in the next sweep," she said. "You will have scans by late afternoon." I thanked her by name. Saying names is another way to keep a record. On my way out, I passed the bulletin board where lost dog notices shared pushpins with guitar lessons, the town talking to itself in paper. I pinned a small index card among them, not an ad, a reminder written for me in my own hand. Tell the truth, then let it walk. The door opened heavy and closed soft behind me. The sound placed a period at the end of an unbroken sentence. Outside, the flag snapped once in a breeze. Clouds moved east. The day cleared its throat. I set the empty box on the passenger seat and rested both hands on the wheel. I did not shake. Somewhere between the counter and the cart, the story had left my house and entered the world that stamps dates and captures signatures. 24 addresses would open. Eyes would track numbers. Phones would ring. Audits would begin. I started the car. The radio found a hymn on a station I never choose. A voice sang about burdens and rest. I turned it low. The melody held steady while I drove home to wait for the first scans, for the first receipts, for the first quiet tremor of consequence moving through a network that mistook my kindness for consent. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed with a short message from the detective. "Units en route. Please remain at home." I set the handset beside the ledger and stepped onto the porch. The air had that clean brightness after rain. The new mailbox wore water beads like small coins. A camera light blinked its quiet red. The lens faced the street as if it had eyelids that never tired. Far off, a siren rose. Not loud, professional. A seam ripper sliding through a line of stitches. Neighbors appeared the way robins do after a storm, one by one. Careful, curious, not unkind. Mr. Patel crossed his lawn with a broom in his hand he did not need. He leaned on it and lifted his chin toward the intersection where the sound grew. I nodded and stayed where I was, one foot on the mat, one on the wood, the door at my back. I pressed the heel of my hand against the frame until the bones in my palm felt their own outline. I was not shaking. 2 cruisers passed, then an unmarked sedan, then a second. The convoy turned down the broad street toward Mark and Lily's block. The sound thinned as distance took it, then settled, then stopped. The neighborhood inhaled. A cardinal shouted from the hedge as if to puncture the hush. I stood and looked at the sky over the roofs. It darkened above the direction of their house, a bruised blue pooling in the late light. News moves faster than tires. A text from a nurse who rents over the bakery flashed. Police at the White Craftsman with the porch swing. Voices. Doors. I kept my phone face down. I lifted the handkerchief from my pocket. Emma's blue stitched name cupped my fingers like a small flag. I returned it to its place. Across the street, Mrs. Green adjusted her glasses and tried not to stare. She gave me a small wave. I returned it. Neither of us crossed. When the first cruiser came back toward our corner, minutes had sharpened into needles. The car rolled past at a deliberate pace. Mark sat in the back, hands secured in front, shoulders set the way boys set them when they hope posture can pass for honor. He looked out hard, scanning, and found me on the porch. Our eyes met like stones clicking in a riverbed. His mouth formed the word Mom. No voice reached me through the glass. I did not step down. I did not lift my chin or lower it. I let my gaze hold level until the car moved on. A second car followed with Lily behind the glass. Her cheeks were dry and perfect, her hair a smooth sheet. She had chosen a mask of composure over tears. When she saw me, she shaped my name without sound. Not Zelda, not Mrs. Monroe, not Mother. Simply a mouth forming syllables that expected to work. I stood as a door stands, painted, useful, closed. The unmarked sedan carried 2 plainclothes officers. They looked toward my house without curiosity, doing their work like competent carpenters. Behind them, an evidence van drove slowly, careful with its turns. A boy on a bicycle stopped and put a foot down. His father reached and set a hand on his shoulder. Lessons can be quiet. The convoy cleared the block. The sound faded. The street exhaled. Mr. Patel tapped his broom twice on the walk and went back inside. Mrs. Green lifted her sprinkler hose and watered the strip of lawn as if plants could read calm from a steady arc. I did not speak. The porch wood warmed my feet through the soles of my shoes. The door at my back waited for a choice. I turned once to look into my hallway mirror. The reflection was a woman with her hair pulled back, mouth set, eyes clear enough to carry what the day demanded. The house smelled like lemon oil and dry paper, the kind of home no one believes can be stolen with a pen. Outside, a single police cruiser returned and paused. The officer in the passenger seat lifted a palm in a gesture that was not victory and not apology. Acknowledgement set to a beat of duty. I inclined my head. That was enough. Mark's name floated in the air like steam from a kettle you forgot you had set on the stove. I let it dissipate. I thought of the lab report and the needles and the red word on my door that no longer stained the grain. I thought of Emma's hand closing around my wrist with the certainty of a lighthouse. Not loud, unwavering. I thought of the envelopes already moving through sorting centers and onto doorsteps. Dates, amounts, arrows in blue ink. A choir of facts that did not need my voice to sing. My hand found the knob. I looked once more down the quiet street toward the turn they had taken. Then I closed the door. The latch caught with a clean sound, not a slam, a sentence ending where it should. Inside, the house was the right size again. The cameras watched the outside. The ledger waited inside. The handkerchief weighed my pocket just enough to remind me who I am when no one is standing in front of me asking me to forget it. Night returned the house to its smallest sounds, the clock in the hallway, the faint tick of cooling pipes, the hush that follows a hard day. I turned on the lamp in my bedroom. Its cone of light held steady on the dresser. I pulled the top drawer. Cedar rose like a memory. Beneath a stack of neatly folded receipts lay a green passbook with a paper label in my handwriting. Rainy day, for Mark. My thumb found the crease where I'd opened it 100 times. The paper softened like fabric. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the first entry, a decade ago. 5% from a thin month when the roof leaked. 5% from a December when customers lined the aisles. 5% even in March when the flu kept people home. A private liturgy, a mother's hedge against a storm I hoped would never come. The ledger was quiet, the figures tidy, the intention loud in my chest. Love is not a faucet. It is a well that needs a gate. I traced the columns with a fingernail and felt a sting that was not anger. It was a clean grief for a script I had kept rehearsing. Rescue, relief, repeat. I saw the hospital light on my face, the officer's pen, the red word that used to stain my door. I closed the passbook and set it on the quilt. I folded my hands as if in church and asked the question I should have asked sooner. If I keep pouring into the same bucket, am I watering a garden or a hole? I wrote a note on plain paper and slid it inside the cover, for those who choose truth. I set out tomorrow's clothes, a navy sweater, slacks with deep pockets, flat shoes that know bank floors. I slept for a handful of hours without dream. Morning woke me with light the color of resolve. The lobby at First Harbor smelled like clean envelopes and carpet glue, the kind of place where decisions acquire dates. Ms. Chen at the desk recognized me from vendor nights. Her professionalism wore kindness. I set the passbook on the counter along with my identification and the detective's card. "I need to close this account," I said, "and open a new one in its place." She listened without interruption, then guided me to a desk where a small plant leaned toward the window. We named the new account together, the Emma Monroe Scholarship. She typed. I watched the letters fill each field. Beneficiary, Community College Foundation, purpose, students who work while studying, preference, those who demonstrate integrity during hardship. I transferred the entire balance with a signature that did not wobble. I added an automatic deposit every quarter, 5% from the shop's net. The same habit redirected like a river cut into a truer bed. Ms. Chen printed documents, the paper warm from the machine, the words crisp. I asked for a cashier's check payable to the foundation, a first grant to start the fund breathing. She slid a blue envelope across the desk. I wrote a small line in the memo space, for those who choose truth. The ink dried without blot. When everything was signed and stamped, Miss Chen stood and shook my hand, not as a clerk to a client, as one citizen to another. Outside, the wind had thinned. The flag on the pole lifted and set, lifted and set. I walked to the car with the empty passbook in my purse and the copies in a folder that felt like a new backbone. A message from Emma waited on my phone. "How are you? Do you need anything?" I typed back, "I am doing something I should have done years ago." At home, I slipped the retired passbook into a drawer with my husband's watch, both useful in their time, both honored by rest. The house felt different by a degree only I could measure. A parameter had been reset. The truth needs a place to live. Today I built it a room with a door and a key. I brewed tea, the kettle sang, I let it, I poured, I drank. I set the cup down and felt the table hold. Emma arrived 2 evenings later. With a set of keys and a plant she called a pothos because it forgives neglect, the kind of mercy I want for us both. Her studio sat 3 blocks from my shop, a second-floor walk-up with morning light and thin floors that carried footsteps like reminders to be gentle. I helped her carry boxes labeled books, shoes, maybe keep. We arranged a small desk under the window, taped the lease packet closed, ate sandwiches on the floor with our backs against fresh paint. Before dawn, I handed her the shop key and the alarm code. The brass felt cool in her palm. We walked together along the quiet street. Bakery air drifted behind us, the town waking in layers. Inside the shop, I let her turn on each set of lights. Back room, aisles, front display, the day unfurling like a banner. She ran her fingers over the counter as if greeting an old friend. I felt the store answer. Training began with a sweep of practical things, receiving logs, vendor names, how to read a packing slip without being fooled by bold print. I showed her fronting and facing, the way boxes line their labels like choir members, the satisfaction of a shelf that tells the truth at a glance. We counted inventory in aisle 2, pads, nails, the felt circles that quiet chairs. Emma made a checklist with neat lines. She writes like someone who means it. Customers let the morning in with them. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe," said Mr. Torres, looking pleased to see me where I have always been. Emma offered him a basket and listened while he debated between 2 kinds of caulk. She asked the right question. "What problem are you trying to solve?" He left with the correct tube and a look that said the day might actually go his way. A retired nurse came for hooks and told Emma she admired her posture. The compliment landed like a benediction. Reflective foil. The town held up a mirror and showed her how well she fit. Between tasks, I told her the story of our first storefront, a narrow space with a roof that insisted on raining where it chose, a December where the heater quit and we sold mittens next to a borrowed space heater. The year I learned that fairness begins with pay and continues with boundaries. "Help," I said, "does not always mean yes." She nodded and wrote it down as if it were a SKU. At lunch, we sat on 2 stools in the office and shared a bag of apples. Emma reached into her tote and pulled out the white cotton square I had stitched with her name. The thread caught the light. She put it back into my hand. "Keep this," she said. "You are the greatest gift." I felt the fabric soften over my palm. A small weight. A right weight. I handed her a thin binder labeled, "How We Do Things." Not rules. Agreements that keep a place honest. She read the first page aloud. "Greet people by name when you can. Sell them what solves their problem. Never more." I placed a spare key on the binder. She looked at me as if the metal had its own courage. This is not nepotism. This is trust that has shown its work. The afternoon brought a contractor buying drop cloths and a teenager looking for sandpaper for a school project. Emma fit each conversation with the ease of someone raised on both screens and eye contact. When a scanner hiccuped, she breathed, unplugged, counted to 10, reconnected. The beeps returned like obedient birds. Mr. Patel stopped by with a jar of cardamom cookies and told Emma the cameras made the block feel protected. She thanked him with the respect of a granddaughter who sees the village. We closed with the habit that keeps a shop from fraying. Sweep, tally, lock. On the sidewalk, the light tilted gold. A neighbor called goodnight. A dog shook its collar. Emma looped her arm through mine. The plant in her window would learn our rhythm soon enough. My phone buzzed with messages I did not open. Praise, rumor, questions. Tomorrow, the town would talk more loudly. Tonight, the aisles were straight. The till balanced. The new key was warm in a new hand. Sunday began with bells and coffee. The town stitched itself together with routine. I walked to St. Agnes with Emma. Our steps were quiet on leaves that had not decided whether to fall. Inside, the pews filled with familiar jackets, people who know the price of milk without checking their phones. We slid into the 4th row. The hymn rose. A volunteer choir found harmonies by listening harder than required. After the dismissal, the narthex turned into a small market of words. Mrs. Green pressed my hand between both of hers. "Brave," she said, a single syllable wrapped in warmth. Mr. Patel stood nearby with a tin of sweets. "Cameras are an excellent deterrent," he added. Then, softer, "Your porch looked strong." A younger woman I barely knew leaned close and whispered, "I told my mother to call her advisor. Thank you for the push." Her breath smelled like peppermint. She disappeared into the flow of coats before I could answer. Not all kindness wears the same shoes. 2 pews down, a pair of cousins collected their coats and their opinions. "It is still family," one said, arranging her scarf. "A daughter-in-law fights for her household. That is not a crime." The other nodded. "Older folks can be confused. Maybe it was a misunderstanding." They did not look at me. Their words floated like incense that stings a little. Emma shifted, ready to braid truth into the air. I touched her sleeve. A small pressure. Stand down. Let the record do its work. At the bake sale table, a teenager asked whether the scholarship form would be posted at the high school. Yes, I said, and at the community college. A retired farmer slid $2 into the jar and offered a nod that said, "We see you, keep going." I balanced a box of oatmeal cookies in my arms while Emma bought a bouquet for her windowsill. Mum's the color of late sunlight. The parish hall smelled like sugar, cardboard, and floor polish. My childhood and my old age shook hands for a minute. The parking lot turned our breath to smoke in the shade. A man I recognized from the hardware aisle approached with his child. The boy hid behind a pant leg, then peeked out. "Ms. Monroe," the father said, "my mother aged out of decisions last year. I wish we had been as steady." I did not know what to do with the ache that sentence carried. I placed a cookie into the boy's mitten. "Steady can be learned," I said. He nodded once. The way a person nods when a sentence lands in a place that matters. By noon, we walked 2 blocks to the weekend market. Vendors arranged apples like jewels. Knives rang on cutting boards. A busker tried 3 chords until the 4th fit. People looked at me with a spectrum of eyes, some bright with solidarity, some narrowed by suspicion, a few wet with stories that would take too long to tell before the kale wilted. A woman leaned in close over a crate of pears. "Your son will always be your son," she said, as if announcing a season. I smiled with my mouth. My eyes kept their weather. Love does not cancel consequence. Family does not cancel truth. Emma bought bread and tucked it under her arm like a book she planned to read twice. We sat on a low wall and shared a paper cup of cider. Across the way, 2 men debated whether cameras violate a neighborhood spirit. "Protection is fine. Paranoia is not," one said. The other shrugged. "Trust is cheaper when facts are expensive." I could feel the tide of opinions curling around our shoes. Social moral conflict wears local accents. It speaks in parking lots and checkout lines. It votes with who gets greeted first. A woman from the prayer chain squeezed my shoulder on her way past. "God sees," she said. Another mother I knew from PTA years told Emma that forgiveness is a command. Emma answered gently, "So is truth." Their words touched and moved on like birds. I kept my jaw unclenched and my breath even. I chose silence the way a mason chooses mortar, as the thing that holds the pieces where they belong. My quiet did not mean consent. It meant the work was elsewhere. Facts were printing on letterhead. Video was being copied. Logs were being signed. On the way home, Emma slipped her hand into the crook of my arm. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I am letting the river do its job." She looked at me sideways. "And if it floods?" I smiled. "Then we will move the furniture and keep what matters dry." We walked past my new mailbox glinting like a small oath. The flag rested. The cameras watched without blinking. The house waited. The town kept talking. I kept breathing. The day bent toward what would be proven next. Monday began with the sound of a stapler. The detective at my table securing forms into a tidy spine. Chain of custody numbers marched down the page. Each line a rung on a ladder no one could kick loose. An officer photographed the dress I had worn at Riverside. Swabs sealed in plastic, labels neat, time stamped twice. The air smelled like coffee and toner. Accuracy has a scent when it is close. By noon, the team had the restaurant footage, dining room cameras, a stairwell lens, a grainy view of the private room corridor. On the screen, I watched a server pour and step away. A hand not in uniform brushed the rim of my glass. The angle was narrow, the gesture clear. Lily's scarf crossed the frame like a small red flag. A time code ticked in the corner. The tape did not care who we were to each other. The maitre d' produced the reservation log. An entry showed our table and an upstairs booking under a consultancy name. The note field read, quiet for signatures, dessert service to follow. The detective slid the page into a sleeve. The plastic whispered. My lungs did the same. A second log listed a pre-arranged dessert cart at 9. It would have coincided with a toast about legacy. I tasted the bitter thread again and felt grateful that my mouth had learned how to refuse. Across the river, an inventory report from a veterinary clinic arrived by fax. 3 vials of a large animal tranquilizer had gone missing in the week before the dinner. The audit trail showed late-night access by a staff badge connected to a friend of Lily's. The clinic manager signed an affidavit, the ink dark and patient. The drug name sat on the page like a tool pulled from a shadowed drawer. No drama. Terrible clarity. A boutique law office turned over email headers under subpoena. The subject lines read transitional control, asset stewardship, voting rights shift, language that pretends to rock a cradle while it steals a name. A draft agreement listed me as grantor and Mark as trustee, Lily as successor. A witness clause described a competency conversation to be conducted in a quiet setting with wine service available. The dates matched the week of the vandalism and the visit to my kitchen. I took a breath and placed my palm on the table. Wood holds strength the way paper holds ink. From the financial planner's side, a glossy brochure had been annotated with arrows toward a trust diagram. The detective compared the arrows to withdrawals from one elder client's account at Lily's firm. Numbers stepped down month by month as if walking toward a hole. The analyst on speakerphone traced lines with her voice, a lattice of transfers, fees, and euphemisms, performance smoothing, temporary sweep, realigning risk. The euphemisms wilted when set beside dates and amounts. At 3, a technician duplicated the restaurant footage onto 2 separate drives. Tags matched, seals pressed. Another officer logged the swabs into an evidence bag. Heat strip turned the right color. Signatures crossed plastic. Custody moved with ceremony that looked like care. I signed my own statement again. Page 3 required initials near the sentences that described the taste, the tingling tongue, the whispered warning by the door, the decision to leave without argument. Each mark steadied me. Before they left, the detective placed a small stack of copies in a blue folder. "This is yours," he said. "If anyone questions what happened, answer with this." He did not mean for me to argue. He meant for the paper to do its work. The folder felt heavier than it should. Weight can be another word for relief. When the house quieted, I set the folder beside my ledger and the scholarship receipts. Truth sat with truth and did not compete. Outside, the camera light blinked. Somewhere downtown, a clerk stamped the reservation log for release. Somewhere across the river, a manager locked a cabinet twice. The investigation was not dramatic. It was methodical. It was patient. It was a set of footsteps leading out of a room I should never have been asked to enter. I boiled water, poured tea, watched steam, draw a clean line up, then vanish, then form again. The meetings happened in rooms that smelled like paper and coffee. Tension set the table and refused to leave. I sat beside the detective and an advocate from victim services while the assistant district attorney explained the options. Plea discussions are a kind of math that folds harm into statutes and time. Across the table, Lily's attorney kept his voice low and polished. Mark's lawyer clicked a pen and wrote nothing down. No one raised a voice. The weight lived in pauses and in the rustle of forms sliding from folders. The prosecutor began with the evidence, the hospital toxicology, the restaurant video that showed a hand near my glass, the reservation log with its line about a quiet room, the veterinary inventory gaps, the draft agreements designed to move control without consent. He used no adjectives. He spoke in citations. When he finished, he set a printed sheet in front of me that defined the offenses I had never thought would be part of my family vocabulary. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, elder exploitation, words that do not soften when you repeat them. Lily looked smaller than I remembered. Her blouse was perfect, her posture careful. She did not look at me. Her lawyer asked for consideration based on a clean record and community service. The prosecutor replied that clean records do not bleach fingerprints off missing funds. He read the amounts, withdrawals that stepped down month by month, names of clients who had already called his office after receiving their envelopes. He offered a plea: guilty to embezzlement and securities fraud, restitution, supervised release, a period of custody measured in months, not weeks, a prohibition on working in finance, mandatory counseling. Lily pressed her lips together and nodded, the nod of someone who sees the floor rise to meet the foot that has no choice. Mark kept his jaw squared. His attorney argued that he had not poured anything or ordered any drug. The prosecutor traced the loans built on my name, the photos of my storefront in his deck, the emails that assured lenders I would never let a note fail, the way due dates braided to hide, the cliff. He offered a plea: guilty to loan fraud and conspiracy, restitution, probation conditioned on full cooperation, a suspended sentence that would become real if he breached a single term. Mark looked at the table as if it could offer another path. It did not. The veterinary tech who enabled the drug access agreed to cooperate, a suspended license, ethics training, community service at an elder center. The attorney who drafted the trust documents faced bar review, interim suspension pending a hearing, his letterhead now a thin shield. The financial planner received a notice of investigation, referral to regulators, his podcast paused by the network that carried it. Consequences arrived in different uniforms. Some sounded like a gavel, some like a lock engaging, some like a calendar filling with appointments no one wants. Days blurred into filings. I met with the advocate to understand restitution, how refunded money still leaves a bruise, how a check can fix a ledger and not a night of sleep. The district attorney called to confirm both pleas. Lily would enter hers in open court. Mark would do the same a day later. He asked whether I wished to speak. I could read a statement or let the paper speak. I signed my name. I chose to submit the lab report, the reservation log, and a single page that said this: I will not argue with the past. I will invest in the part of the future that chooses truth. In court, fluorescent lights made everyone pale. Lily answered the judge's questions with a voice that did not shake. Guilty. Yes, I understand. Her attorney rested a hand on her shoulder as if ownership could pass for comfort. The judge set the sentence within the agreement: custody, barred profession, restitution, letters of apology to named clients, a compliance schedule that would keep time better than willpower. When Lily turned, our eyes touched and slid apart like rain on glass. Nothing remained that words could repair. Mark's hearing felt quieter. The same questions, the same answers. The word guilty, twice. The judge warned him that a suspended sentence is a promise with teeth. One breach and steel would close. When he left the podium, he looked toward the benches and found me. I did not lift my hand. I kept my breath even. Closure does not clap. It breathes and makes room for the next step. I stepped into the hallway, felt the day on my face, and let the system carry the part that belongs to it. Late afternoon leaned amber across the shop. Emma and I swept leaves from the stoop. The broom made a soft sound like memory. We locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and sat on 2 stools in the back office where my ledger lives beside a photo of my husband. Emma intertwined her fingers and looked at me with clear weight. "Grandma, do you regret it?" she asked. The word regret pulled up a chair between us. I opened the drawer and set a small green passbook on the desk. The label was rubbed thin by years of handling. Rainy day. For an E. Mark. I turned to the last line. The balance ended in zeros by choice, not by loss. "I am sad," I said, "but I am not sorry. Sad belongs to love. Sorry belongs to mistakes." I did not mistake the truth. Emma reached toward the book, then paused, honoring the space around grief. I slid it to her. She weighed it as if it were a living thing. "You saved for him for years," she said. I did, I answered. And this week I moved the entire sum into the Emma Monroe Scholarship. The same habit, a truer direction. Truth must be fed or it starves. A tear gathered at the edge of her eye and fell onto the faded label, darkening the paper to a small oval. The office stayed quiet. People keep telling me forgiveness is immediate, she said. Some say boundaries are cruel. Do you worry that closing a door makes you the villain in someone else's story? I worry less now, I answered. A boundary is not a weapon, it is a shoreline. It says where to anchor and where to stop. If I erase it to keep peace, I teach the water to eat the land. I raised your father to swim. I cannot carry him across rivers he chooses to enter. I will not lie about what happened, and I will not pay anyone into better character. Emma breathed out. The sound carried relief and fatigue. Do you forgive them? She asked. Forgiveness and access are different currencies, I said. I am working on the first. The second must wait for evidence of change. The door is still built. The latch requires a hand that knows how to knock. I took out a copy of the scholarship letter and read the line I had written in the memo field. For those who choose truth. Emma smiled in a way that touched child and woman at once. You are teaching me a different math, she said. Love invests in character before comfort. We split an apple. Tart. Clean. Enough. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past and the driver waved. Small towns do their best work with waves. I told her about the first time I said no to a supplier who sold speed as wisdom. My hands shook. The roof did not fall. Courage feels like nausea until it feels like a chair you finally sit in, I said. She laughed once. The sound brightened the room. I want to be the kind of person who sits sooner, she said. You already are, I answered. You pulled me away from a table set for harm. You paid the price without billing anyone else. That is adult work. The clock in the office clicked. I stood in the doorway that frames the sales floor. From there, I saw neat rows of useful things that know how to be what they are. Emma joined me. She set the passbook back on the desk and placed the embroidered handkerchief on top of it. Keep this for now, she said. I want to earn it again on a better day. I laid my palm over cotton and paper. Sad will visit, I said, but it will pass if we keep what is decent. The truth needs tending the way any living thing does. Water, light, boundaries, time. She nodded. The last of the light drew a soft bar across the counter. We turned off the lamp, locked the door, and stepped into air that smelled of wood smoke and cinnamon from the bakery. On the walk home, she asked again if I was sure. I said yes, I am feeding the right garden now. We unlocked the shop before sunrise. The dark held its breath. Then the lights lifted like curtains. Emma set a ladder under the front beam while I unwrapped the new sign. Monroe's home, useful things. Fair price. Established by hands. Kept by hearts. We hung it square. The letters looked honest against the old wood. On the side wall, we mounted a gallery of small frames, photographs of women who built this town in pieces, a seamstress who paid cash for her first machine, a baker who opened at 4, a teacher who ran night classes in her living room, a widow who kept bees and taught children to stand still. Under each photo, a card with a name and one line about grit. Emma stepped back and smiled. The wall felt like a chorus that had finally found microphones. Near the register, we placed a clear box with a blue card inside, the Emma Monroe Scholarship, for students who work while they learn, for those who choose truth. A slot waited for folded bills, checks, notes. We taped a flyer with a QR code to the counter. The form lived online now. Help could travel faster than envelopes. By the door, we stacked a small rack labeled Makers, goods from local founders, soap stamped in a kitchen mold, candles poured in thrifted jars, pot holders sewn on a machine that clicks like a metronome. Rebrand did not mean a new soul. It meant the true one stepping forward. We rearranged the front table, not seasonal fluff, useful things made with care, wool socks, brass hooks, sandpaper that will not lie. I wrote a sentence on the chalkboard in block letters. We sell solutions, not pressure. Ask. We will listen. Emma drew a small handkerchief in the corner, a nod only we would feel. The heater hummed, lemon oil lifted. I pressed the doorbell once. The chime answered, a bright ping that sounded like a promise from metal. At 9, the first customer stopped on the mat and looked up at the wall of women. Her mouth softened. She put a palm flat over her heart in a quiet amen. Then she pushed the door. The bell rang true, a delicate leng keng. The shop inhaled. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe," she said. "I brought a toaster that refuses to cooperate." Emma carried the cord with care, as if wires remembered tone. We sold her a new plug kit and a map of steps written in plain verbs. She dropped a 5 in the scholarship box and said, "Make somebody braver." Mr. Patel arrived with cardamom cookies and a folded check. He slid it through the slot without ceremony. "For students who work," he said. Mrs. Green bought 2 picture rail hooks and told me the gallery made her eyes sting. Her mother had 3 jobs. Nobody took her picture. Now somebody would. A contractor asked if we could keep copies of the scholarship forms by the door. His crew included a 16-year-old saving for community college. His pride warmed the aisle like a small furnace. A reporter from the local weekly hovered near the paintbrushes. She asked for a quote. I kept it short. "We are who we have always been. Now we are louder about it." She took a photo of the gallery wall and the donation box. Emma stood out of frame. This is a faceless story by design. The focus lives in hands. A teenage cashier from the bakery brought over a bag of day-old rolls with a note taped to it. This is not charity. This is neighbors. Keep going. Emma rang a sale and made exact change the way I taught her. Put the bills face up, stack them with respect. Money behaves better when you do. The bell chimed again. A man in a work jacket bought 2 drop cloths. He pointed to the donation box and said his daughter had filled out the form at lunch. His voice carried hope with calluses. A retired nurse pressed a 20 into the slot and whispered, "For the girl I once was." The box filled slow, then steady, small rectangles of belief. Near noon, a quiet fell between customers. We stood shoulder to shoulder behind the counter and let the room reflect us back. The gallery glowed. The chalkboard sentence held its line. The scholarship card caught the light. I felt the house of my life shift. A load-bearing wall had moved and nothing cracked. Emma reached out and touched the bell with one fingertip. It answered with a single cheerful note, Leng Keng, a sound like clear water in a glass. I unlocked the back door to let in cold air and the smell of bread from the alley. Rebirth does not shout. It stacks tasks and invites hands. It opens on time. It writes receipts. It gives a town a reason to walk in and ring the bell. When we closed for lunch, a small girl pressed her face to the windows and read the names under the photos. Her mother bent to sound them out with her. We waved, the girl waved back and rang the bell with her eyes. The world had not changed. The world knew where to find a door that would not move when pushed for the wrong reasons and would open when asked with care. We ate on stools and shared cookies. The box on the counter kept its watch. The gallery wall breathed. The sign above the door settled into its nails like it had always been there. That night, the shop slept in its own light. We had left the gallery bulbs on low so the faces would not vanish after closing. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen that does not skip. The house made the same night sounds as always, a refrigerator tick, the heater's thin start, the clock's patient measure. I wrote Mark's name on the top line. The ink looked firm. The word looked smaller than the trouble it carried. Dear Mark, I kept this for years and did not send it. I am writing now to clean the room inside me where your name lives. You were my first ledger, the account I most wanted to keep in the black. When you were 12, I paid for cleats by skipping a haircut. When you were 19, I bought a transmission before paying the gas bill. When you were 24, I covered the rent you forgot while learning how to say the word entrepreneur. I made a small passbook and called it Rainy Day. I put 5% in it no matter what the month asked. I never told you. Love should not become leverage. I told the page the rest. I described the hospital light on my face, the nurse saying the drug's name, the officer writing without adjectives, the video that does not care who we are to each other. I wrote that I did not believe evil lived in him. I believed weakness made itself a costume, and he mistook it for hunger. I told him I had moved the entire passbook into a scholarship with Emma's name. The habit stays. The direction changes. I wrote the line that keeps me steady. The truth must be fed, or it starves. I wrote about doors. The one at Riverside that closed behind me like a boundary finally set. The one at my house that caught with a clean click when the cruisers turned the corner. The shop door that sings when a hand asks kindly to be let in. I wrote that my door for him is not welded shut. It is latched. Latches exist for knocking and for learning how to wait. If he chooses truth, if he repairs without theater, if he makes restitution without asking for applause, if he learns the difference between promise and proof, then he can try the latch again. I will listen with both ears and both decades. I wrote that I would not finance his character. The price is not mine to pay. I will not argue with anyone who calls this unkind. They can raise their own sons with open books if they like. I will not sit in rooms where wine lubricates signatures. I will not return to tables where words are tools for moving a pen toward paper that harms me. I will not lie for him. I will not lie to him. I will say his name in prayer because that is free and it moves slower and better than money. The pad filled with lines that looked like rails. I read the letter aloud to the walls. My voice did not break. It warmed. I did not put it in an envelope. Instead, I folded it twice and placed it in the drawer with the green passbook that no longer holds a balance and the white handkerchief with Emma's name in blue thread. I rested my palm on the stack. Paper, cloth, habit, future, all under one hand. I turned off the lamp and stood in the dark until my eyes learned the room again. In bed, I pictured Mark as a boy tapping his cleats against the porch before sleep. I pictured him as a man in a courtroom, answering yes to a judge who meant it. Both pictures can live in one mind without burning it down. I fell asleep quickly. The kind of sleep that comes when you decide not to send a letter and also decide to keep it. The kind that respects both boundary and mercy. Morning would bring new customers and familiar noises. The gallery would glow. The scholarship box would gather crumpled bills and careful checks. The bell would sing for people who pushed the door. My letter would wait in its drawer, a map rolled tight, the road marked in ink, the legend clear, truth required, knock with evidence, leave your performance on the porch. Dawn opens like a careful hand. The street is quiet. The bakery's first batch sighs warm into the alley. I unlock the shop and let the lights rise. Rows of simple things glow the way truth glows when no one is selling it. Emma arrives with her hair in a knot and a smile that lives at the corners. We lift the gate together and set the bell. The little tongue tests its voice. A single bright note rings and disappears. I straighten the front table. Wool socks, brass hooks, sandpaper, and honest grits. Emma tends the gallery wall. Women who built this town watch the morning with patience. Under their frames are blue card weights in a clear box. The Emma Monroe Scholarship, for students who work while they learn, for those who choose truth. We stock shelves in an easy duet. I count, she faces. Her checklist keeps steady time. The heater hums, lemon oil rises, the door glass fogs and clears with our breathing. Outside, frost loosens from the curb. Light slides under the awning. Emma passes behind me in the narrow aisle and pauses. Her hand rests on my wrist. Just a moment, just enough. Her palm warm, her fingers sure. I meet her eyes, calm, anchored. "Ready?" she says. I think of the first night she pulled me from a room designed to separate me from myself, of the hospital light, of the sound a latch makes when it closes correctly. I say it the way a vow belongs to air. The small hand from years ago closes around me once more. I flip the sign to open. The bell answers with a cheerful ling keng. The day walks in wearing boots and errands. Mr. Torres needs a plumb line. A teacher wants picture hooks for a hallway exhibit. A young mother buys a hammer, a pack of nails, and courage. Each leaves lighter than they arrived. Each glances at the wall of women and stands a little taller. The donation box collects a soft rustle of bills. A card with a name and a promise joins them. First year, part-time, will not quit. I stamp receipts with the neat rhythm that kept my heart steady through nights that tried to tilt the floor. At 10, the reporter's piece goes live. A neighbor reads it aloud over a roll and waves through the window. The article is small and accurate. It lists no villains. It lists verbs: install, report, return, reform, invest. I tape one copy near the register, not as a trophy, as a map for anyone needing a way through their own tangle. Emma wipes the counter. I sort vendor invoices. We do the work that keeps a place honorable. Power, it turns out, sounds like sweeping and balancing a till. It looks like a bell that rings only when asked. It feels like a hand on your wrist that guides rather than owns. Near noon, the store grows quiet. Winter light lies soft on the chalkboard. We sell solutions, not pressure. Ask. We will listen. I pour tea into 2 cups. We lean against the counter and watch the door. I touch the folded handkerchief in my apron pocket. White cotton, blue thread, her name stitched by my older hands, proof that love can be practical and precise. I turn to you now, yes, you, wherever this finds you. Before we say goodbye, we would love to know where you are watching from. Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee, a window that holds the sky just right, or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Tell us in the comments. We read every one with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to the channel, not only to hear more stories like this, but to join a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, I hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle does not knock on your door. It waits quietly until you are ready to open your heart. One more thing, if it is your season to choose, would you pick the truth or the version of family that asks you to forget yourself? Have you walked something like this? Stood on a porch and closed a door without slamming it? Set a boundary and kept your voice gentle? Share what you can. Someone is listening who needs your map. Emma lifts the bell gently. It sings again, a clear note rising, then resting. I look at her hand on my wrist, at the gallery, at the box with a blue card, at the door that opens for those who knock correctly. My name is Zelda Monroe, shopkeeper, widow, grandmother. The ground under my feet is steady. The small hand from years ago closes around me once more. We face the aisle. We face the day. We are open.